We laughed when the human claimed she didn't need weapons. 42 seconds later, we understood, humans themselves were the weapons. I've witnessed plenty of poor decisions in my 30 years at the Galactic Combat Academy. I've seen Vorian cadets try to breathe underwater, Quilnari attempt flight without wings, and even a Tremel cadet challenge a gravity well to single combat. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day a human walked in and insisted she didn't need any weapons. I am Tarvik Moss, Senior Combat Observer at the Academy. And yes, before you ask, I am a Kelleran. That means I have 4 arms, natural bone plating across my chest, and enough combat experience to sense when someone is about to make a deadly mistake. The Academy is located on Nexus Prime, a neutral world where the galaxy's finest come to learn warfare. Finest might be generous. Mostly, we get second sons, ambitious daughters, and the occasional lunatic who thinks he can punch through a blast door. The rules are straightforward. No energy weapons in the training halls, no firearms, no explosives, no plasma cutters, no molecular disruptors, and absolutely no gravitational devices. Why? Because some genius from the Turvan Collective once brought a pocket singularity generator to class and nearly destroyed half the Eastern Wing. The Academy rebuilt, the lawsuit was settled, and Command implemented the no-weapons rule faster than anyone could say, catastrophic insurance premiums. Here's the twist, the policy bans manufactured weapons, but it says nothing about natural ones. And the galaxy is full of species already equipped with built-in weaponry that would make any arms dealer jealous. Take the Krellians, for example, standing 7 feet tall, armored with chitinous plates capable of deflecting small arms fire, and equipped with retractable bone claws strong enough to tear through a cargo hauler. The Suin, with their scaled bodies and venom glands, can bring down a Quilari bull in under 8 seconds. The Horak grow crystalline spikes from their forearms. The Vexen have prehensile tails tipped with paralytic barbs. The point is clear, the Academy isn't a level playing field, it's a display of evolutionary advantages. Every species brings its own strengths, honed over millions of years in harsh environments. Combat training here focuses on using these natural gifts to gain the upper hand, leveraging inherent biology for maximum effectiveness. Then there's the human. She arrived on a Tuesday. Of course, Tuesdays are when unusual things happen. Her name was Kira Bennett. She looked entirely unremarkable, around 5 feet 6 inches, brown hair tied back in a ponytail, wearing the standard gray Academy jumpsuit. No armor, no claws, no fangs, no venom, no spikes, no natural weapons. Just a data pad in her hands. Her presence barely registered, until the other cadets noticed how completely ordinary she was. Grake, a Krellian built like a walking tank, actually laughed when she entered the hall. They're letting mammals with no defenses into the Academy now? What's next? Prey species. Nearby, Valira, a siren, flicked her forked tongue in amusement. Look at her. No claws, no armor, no toxins. How did she even survive on her home planet? Kira didn't respond. She quietly took a seat near the back and started reading. The room soon lost interest. After all, what threat could she possibly pose? Instructor Thni, a veteran Horth with more scars than functional limbs, stood at the front and activated the holo display. Welcome to Week 4, cadets. By now, you should all know the Academy regulations. Today, we start practical combat assessments. You will face opponents from various species, weight classes, and fighting styles. The goal is simple: demonstrate your ability to neutralize threats using your natural abilities. He paused, letting his crystal-tipped spikes catch the light. The challenge system is active. Any cadet may issue a sanctioned combat challenge. Victory earns points toward your final ranking. Defeat teaches humility. Permanent injury results in expulsion, and a very disappointed letter to your home world. Try not to die. The paperwork is excessive. Cadets began evaluating one another. Krellians flexed claws. Sathran checked venom glands. Vexens swished their tails. Everyone calculated advantages, identified weaker opponents, and planned their path to success. In the back, Kira Bennett remained focused on her data pad, entirely indifferent to the predatory energy in the room. I watched her closely. There was something unsettling about her stillness. Prey freeze when threatened. Predators go still when hunting. I had a sinking feeling I knew which she was. Instructor Thni then displayed a holographic model of a generic bipedal species, all glowing blue lines and rotating anatomical markers. Combat fundamentals, he said. He began speaking in the familiar tone of someone who had delivered this lecture thousands of times. Survival is based on 3 principles: offense, defense, and adaptability. Your species has given you natural tools. The question is whether you can use them effectively. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to display Krellian anatomy. Take grass, for example. Bone plating, retractable claws, and a superior strength-to-weight ratio, offense and defense combine naturally. Stand up, Grake. The massive Krell rose from his seat, the floor tiles cracking beneath his weight. He extended his claws with a sharp sound, each one about 6 inches of serrated bone glinting under the hall lights. The other cadets murmured in appreciation. Impressive natural weapons, Fane noted. Now, Valeria, please demonstrate. The siren female moved gracefully, her green and gold scales catching the light. She opened her mouth, extending her fangs, which dripped a clear liquid that hissed as it hit the floor. A small wisp of smoke rose from the droplet. Neurotoxin, she said, her voice carrying the subtle sibilance of her species. Paralysis in 15 seconds, unconsciousness in 30, death in 3 minutes without treatment. Efficient and lethal. Fane nodded in agreement. Vexen cadets, your turn. 3 Vexens stepped forward, tails raised, barbed tips glistening with chemical agents. One male, Court, grinned widely, revealing too many teeth. Paralytic agent, he said. Non-lethal, but our prey is incapacitated for hours, ideal for capture operations. Fane addressed the room. Each of you represents millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Your ancestors survived because they were armed, dangerous, and adaptable. You are the current iteration of that success. From the back, Gross' voice boomed, what about the human? What did her species bring? A ripple of laughter moved through the assembly. Even some diplomatic species smiled. Jira, however, didn't look up from her data pad. I observed her closely. Her heart rate was steady, posture relaxed, either nerves of steel or complete indifference to being mocked by a walking siege weapon. Humans, Thane began slowly, displaying their species profile. They are Class 7 Death World survivors. Their planet, Earth, is considered marginally hostile by galactic standards. Marginally hostile? Valor repeated, a note of amusement in her voice. My home has acid rainstorms and predators in every shadow. Humans deal with bad weather. They don't even have claws, Cord added. Flat nails, soft skin, no natural armor. They are essentially walking targets. Thane's spikes rattled faintly, the Krell equivalent of a sigh. Still, they meet the minimum physical standards for academy admission. Moving on. First sparring sessions begin in 10 minutes. The combat rings are ready. Who will volunteer for the opening demonstration? Grake stood immediately, his massive frame casting a shadow over half the room. I volunteer, Instructor. I want to establish proper dominance early. Acceptable opponent. I expected silence. Grake was not just large, he was championship level. His clan had produced 3 galactic combat champions in the last century. Challenging him in Week 4 was essentially volunteering for injury and a bruised ego. Kira Bennett closed her data pad. The click echoed through the suddenly silent hall. I will fight him, she said, her voice calm and casual, as if volunteering to carry supplies rather than facing a biological war machine. Silence held for about 3 seconds before the hall burst into laughter. Booming guffs led the chorus, joined by Valira's hissing chuckles and the court's barking laughter. Even the thing's spikes rattled, perhaps in amusement. The human volunteers, Grake managed between laughs. Oh, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. I promise to make it quick, little mammal. You will barely feel the humiliation. Kira stood and walked down the aisle toward the combat rings. All eyes followed her. Her gait was easy and efficient, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Up close, she seemed even less imposing. Her arms were thin compared to Gross' trunk-like limbs. Her hands appeared soft and delicate. She had no visible muscle mass, no threatening features, nothing to suggest she could survive even 10 seconds against a Krellian warrior. Instructor, Valor called out, genuine concern creeping into her voice. Should we have medical standing by? Humans are fragile, their bones break easily. Medical is always on standby, Fane replied, though a slight hesitation in his voice revealed his own concern. Had this human fully understood what she had volunteered for? Jira stepped into Ring 1, a circular platform 20 meters in diameter, surrounded by energy barriers to contain the fight and protect spectators from stray claws, venom, or flying body parts. Gra lumbered in behind her, claws already extended, bone plating gleaming. The size difference was striking. Gra likely outweighed her by at least 300 pounds. His reach was double hers. His armor could probably withstand small explosives. And Kira Bennett simply stood there, hands at her sides, weight evenly balanced, watching him with dark eyes that reflected the ring lights like a predator's. Ready positions, Fane announced. Standard combat rules apply. Fight ends at submission, incapacitation, or my command. Lethal force is prohibited. Begin on my mark. Gra flexed his neck. A sound like breaking stone echoed. Any last words, human? Kira smiled, not kindly. Humans do not need weapons. The hall fell silent. Fane's hand dropped. Begin. Let me set the scene properly, because what happened next changed how I viewed an entire species. I've done this job for 30 years, seen every combat style in the galaxy. Horric crystal fighters move through opponents like living blenders, Saturn assassins drop targets before they sense danger, Krellian champions tear through reinforced barriers with bare claws. Yet I had never seen anything like Kira Bennett in that ring. Pre-fight assessment by the numbers. Grake was 7 feet 2 inches tall, weighed around 430 pounds, and had bone plating rated to withstand impacts of up to 3,000 pounds per square inch. His claws could penetrate standard hull plating. His reaction time, while not extraordinary by galactic standards, was adequate for his size. He possessed every advantage: strength, natural armor, and natural weapons. Kira Bennett, 5 feet 6 inches and maybe 140 pounds soaking wet, had no armor, claws, venom, scales, spikes, or any natural defenses. Her soft skin could be pierced by almost anything sharp. Her bones could break under sufficient force. By every measurable metric, she should not have survived 5 seconds. The moment Fane's hand dropped, Grake charged. This was not a cautious advance or a tactical maneuver, it was a direct charge, designed to use his sheer mass to overwhelm her. 300 pounds of armored Krell moving faster than expected. Claws extended, prepared to end the confrontation with one decisive strike. Kira didn't retreat. She moved sideways, a blur so quick that my eye stalks struggled to follow. One moment she was directly in Gross' path, the next, she had vanished. Gross' momentum carried him past her position, his claws cutting through empty space. The hall fell silent, a tense pause where everyone seemed to hold their breath. Gross spun with speed no creature his size should manage, claws raised for a follow-up attack. But Kira was already inside his guard, where his reach offered no advantage, where his claws couldn't find purchase, and where gaps in his bone plating allowed for mobility. She struck his elbow with the base of her palm, targeting the joint precisely. Gross' arm buckled, not broken, not dislocated, just momentarily uncooperative. His claws retracted as a reflex response to sudden nerve disruption. What? Gra managed to say, confusion evident in his voice. Kira gave no answer. She moved again, ducking under his other arm, her hand striking the back of his knee with calculated precision. Gross' leg gave way, his massive body tipping forward. It was then I realized her approach. She wasn't trying to overpower him. She wasn't matching strength with strength. She was attacking his structure, his balance, the inherent vulnerabilities of any bipedal form, joints, leverage points, and center of gravity. Grake roared, the sound vibrating through the energy barriers, and swung both arms in a wide arc meant to hit her no matter where she moved. But she didn't dodge. Instead, she dropped low beneath the swing and swept her legs in a precise arc that hooked behind Grask's already weakened knee. Physics took over. The 430-pound Krellian warrior lost balance when one leg was swept out from under him and fell hard. The impact shook the ring platform. Grake hit face first, the sound of his bone plating echoing like a gong. The hall went quiet except for his heavy breathing. He tried to push himself up, but Kira was already on his back. One knee pressed into his spine, one hand held his arm in a controlled twist, enough pressure to manipulate the joint without breaking it. Tap out, she said calmly. Not gloating, not angry, just stating a fact. Grake struggled, pride pushing him beyond reason. Kira shifted her weight and pressed harder. His eyes widened as he realized she could dislocate his shoulder effortlessly. Each attempt to rise only gave her more leverage. His free hand hit the platform 3 times in submission. Kira immediately released him, stepped back, and offered her hand to help him up. Grake stared at it as if unsure, then slowly accepted it. She helped lift his massive bulk to his feet, the size difference almost striking, but no longer seemed impossible. Thane's voice cut through the silence, "Winner, Cadet Bennett. Time, 42 seconds. 42 seconds. She had defeated a champion lineage Krell without claws, armor, venom, or natural weapons, just knowledge, speed, and precision. Grake looked at his own hands, confused. How? He asked quietly, his voice smaller than any Krellian voice I had heard. Kira smiled slightly and finished his thought. That is what you keep saying. But humans evolved on a planet where everything was a threat: predators, weather, bacteria, even plants. We weren't the biggest, strongest, fastest, or most venomous. No claws, no fangs, no armor. She glanced around at the watching cadets, all of whom had natural weapons and physical advantages. So we learned to break things that were stronger. We learned every weak point, every leverage, every way to use physics in our favor. We learned to fight everything with just these. She held up her hands, small and seemingly harmless. After millions of years of practice, she continued, we realized the most dangerous weapon isn't claws, venom, or armor. It's pattern recognition, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to quit. Those are our natural weapons, and they work perfectly. Valira's tongue flicked nervously. Court's tail had stopped moving. The hall, which had been laughing minutes ago, fell completely quiet. Graque nodded slowly, respect clear in his eyes. I will not underestimate your species again, he said. Good, I replied, because I'm not even close to the scariest human you'll ever meet. That moment made me realize the galaxy had probably misjudged what survivors from a Class 7 death world could do. When you publicly defeat the biggest predator in the room, every other predator suddenly feels the need to prove themselves, showing that their skills can succeed where sheer strength failed. Pride seems to be universal across species. The LRA stepped forward first. Then the Saffron entered, her scales glinting and confidence evident in every movement. You defeated strength, she said, her forked tongue flicking. Let's see how you handle speed and venom. Tane raised an eyebrow but allowed it. I think even he was curious. So were we all. The fight lasted 1 minute and 18 seconds. Valeria was fast, I'll give her that. Her strikes came like lightning, fangs extending and retracting to herd prey into position. But Kira wasn't prey. She read Valeria's attack patterns like a textbook, dodging precisely and conserving energy. When Valeria overextended slightly on a strike, Kira caught her arm, redirected the force, and applied a joint lock that made the Saturn hiss in pain and submit within seconds. Pattern recognition, Kira said, helping Valeria up. Humans are exceptionally good at it. Your strikes were fast, but they followed a rhythm. Once I saw the pattern, I just had to wait for the opening. Next, Court volunteered along with 2 other Vexen. 3-on-1, he announced. Surely your pattern recognition can't track multiple opponents at once. Fane should have stopped it. 3 against 1 violated standard protocol, but he looked at Kira, saw her nod, and let it proceed. By now, we were all starting to question her limits. The fight lasted 3 minutes and 47 seconds. It was intense. The Vexen attacked from 3 directions, tails striking in coordinated patterns to overwhelm through numbers and synchronization. Kira moved like water, using their positioning against them. When one attacked, she would shift another into the line, forcing them to abort or risk hitting each other. She separated them, isolated them, and took them down one by one, using their tails as handles for throws and leverage. All 3 Vexen tapped out. Court was last, hanging upside down, suspended by a submission hold using his own tail. How? He gasped. Adaptability, Kira said, lowering him gently. Humans can adjust tactics mid-fight. We constantly process new information, update strategies, and exploit weaknesses as they appear. Your coordination was good, but everyone used the same basic pattern. Once I recognized it, handling 1 to 3 opponents was just a matter of processing. A Horthack cadet named Dren entered the ring next. Older and more experienced, his body bore scars from past battles. I have fought for 20 cycles, he growled. I don't rely on patterns. I adapt. I change. I survive. The fight lasted 7 intense minutes. Dren tried everything, mixing attacks, changing rhythm, using feints and misdirection. He was clearly skilled, likely the best fighter in the cadet class. But as time passed, I noticed something. Dren was breathing heavily, his movement slowing, his crystalline spikes dimming slightly from effort. Kira, however, remained steady. Her breathing was elevated but controlled. Her movements stayed precise and efficient. She wasn't trying to end the fight quickly, she was outlasting him. At the 7-minute mark, Dren's guard faltered for just half a second. Kira moved in, executed a throw, and locked him before he could recover. He tapped out immediately, too exhausted to continue. Endurance, she said. Not even winded. Humans have one of the best stamina-to-body weight ratios of almost any species our size. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Hours, sometimes days. We just don't stop. Fane stepped forward, his spikes rattling with what I now recognized as concern. Cadet Bennett, you've made your point. 5 consecutive victories are sufficient. 6, called a voice from the crowd. A Tremoloch, all muscle and armor plating. I challenge. 7, added another, a species I didn't immediately recognize, covered in crystalline growths. Kira glanced at the newcomer, whose spikes drooped. 1 more, he said. Then we break for analysis. The Tremoloch lasted 4 minutes. The crystalline species, 2.5. Both fell to the same issue. They had natural weapons, inherent advantages, millions of years of evolutionary specialization. Kira had millions of years of learning to fight anything, and the ability to adapt during battle. By the time FH called the halt, Kira had faced 7 opponents and won all 7. She stood in the center of the ring, finally showing signs of fatigue, sweat dampening her hair, but still upright and ready. Enough, Dni commanded. Cadet Bennett, explain. Your species clearly has combat abilities beyond physical appearance. What am I missing? Kira took a drink from a water container, catching her breath. Instructor, how long has your species been using weapons? About 40,000 standard cycles, Fane replied. Since we developed metallurgy, Grake interjected, still nursing his pride, 60,000 cycles for us. That's how long it's been since we learned to shape our own bone growths into tools. Kira nodded. Humans have been using weapons for roughly 2.5 million years, rocks, sticks, bones, anything we could use. Organized, strategic wars go back at least 10,000 years. Wars where we studied anatomy, physics, leverage, and weak points, not just to hunt, but to fight each other. Every species' natural weapon you see here, we faced something similar on Earth and learned to counter it. Claws? We fought bears and big cats. Venom? Snakes and spiders. Armor? Armored mammals and reptiles. Size advantage? We took down creatures 50 times our mass. Humans have always been the underdog, and we survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and stubborn enough to endure. The hall fell silent. Even the usual shifting and murmuring of cadets stopped. Kira continued, we do not have natural weapons. Because we are the weapon. Our brains, our pattern recognition, our endurance, adaptability, and absolute refusal to accept defeat, that's what millions of years on a death world created. We do not need a claws instructor. We have something better, experience. Experience fighting everything that exists. She paused, tired but satisfied. I've observed combat for 3 decades. I thought I understood predators, thought I knew what made a species dangerous, what separated prey from hunters, what determined survival. I was wrong. Completely. Here's what I've learned, in the galaxy, predators generally fall into categories. Ambush predators, like the scythe, strike fast and rely on venom. Pursuit predators, like the Vexen, use packs and coordinated attacks. Power predators, like the Krellians, overwhelm with strength and armor. Every species has a niche, shaped by millions of years of evolution. And then there are humans. Humans don't fit into one category, they fit into all. They can be ambush predators when needed, pursuit predators when necessary, power predators when they have the advantage. They are not specialized, they are generalized in a way that should not work, should have led to evolutionary dead ends. But it did work. And how it worked. That evening, the Academy Council held an emergency session. The recordings of fights were presented, and it became clear to a room full of military strategists that they had fundamentally misunderstood an entire classification of species. Humans, or Deathworlders as they called them, Class 7 survivors from harsh environments, were far more than resilient or scrappy. They were something else entirely. Deathworlders were not merely survivors. They were instruments shaped by environments so harsh and unforgiving that anything vulnerable was eliminated, leaving only the most formidable traits. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, most venomous, or most heavily armored species. They were something more formidable, the most adaptable, persistent, and capable of learning from every encounter, failure, and battle. You cannot outlast them, they have superior endurance. You cannot outthink them, they recognize patterns quickly. You cannot overpower them, they know every weak point in your structure. You cannot surprise them, they have fought wars. And you cannot intimidate them, they come from a world where nearly everything was lethal, yet they still rose to the top of the food chain. The next morning, at Thane's request, Kira stood before the assembled cadets. The hall was full. News had spread, and even cadets from advanced classes were there to see the human who had defeated 7 opponents consecutively without a scratch. Cadet Bennett, DNE began, his tone now respectful rather than dismissive. The council has asked you to explain your species' combat abilities. Specifically, they want to understand how a species without natural weapons has achieved such skill. Kira stood at ease, accepting the attention with a calm confidence prey species never showed. Certainly. Earth is technically a Class 7 marginally hostile planet. That's accurate, but misleading. Our planet has experienced at least 5 mass extinctions, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and climate shifts that wiped out nearly 90% of life. Humanity evolved during the last ice age, when resources were scarce, predators were everywhere, and survival required being smarter than everything trying to eat you. She paused and looked around the hall. We were not the strongest of the apes. Neanderthals were stronger, more robust, and better adapted to cold. But we outlasted them because we could throw more accurately, plan strategically, and cooperate effectively. We hunted mammoths, creatures weighing 6 tons, using pointed sticks and teamwork. We faced cave bears, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, creatures larger and naturally more dangerous than us. We survived because we learned from every encounter and never gave up. Grake spoke up thoughtfully. Yesterday, you said, you are not the scariest human. What did you mean by that? Kira chuckled. I'm just an academy cadet. I have basic training, maybe 5 years of martial arts, and standard fitness. On Earth, there are special forces who train for decades, survive real combat, and perfect fighting techniques to a high level. We have athletes who can run 100 kilometers without stopping and fighters who dedicate their entire lives to combat. By human military standards, I'm average. The hall went silent. Average. She was average. The Galactic Council had labeled humans as non-threatening, citing the lack of natural weapons. Valor spoke slowly. That judgment was wrong. Very wrong. Thane nodded, his spikes rattling, an expression I now recognized as embarrassment. Cadet Bennett, he continued, the Council asked me to extend an invitation. They want to set up formal combat training exchanges with Earth, human instructors teaching galactic forces, and vice versa. Kira nodded. I think Earth would be interested. Learning new fighting styles is kind of our thing. Court raised a claw hesitantly. Will you continue sparring with us? I want to learn your techniques. Me as well, Gra added. Fighting you taught me more in 42 seconds than I had learned in 42 days before. Around the hall, other cadets murmured in agreement. The mocking tone from yesterday was gone, replaced by genuine respect, even admiration. They had realized what I had learned. The most dangerous predator is not the one with the sharpest claws or deadliest venom. It is the one that learns from every encounter, adapts to every situation, and never stops advancing. Kira smiled, ready to spar with anyone willing. That is how humans improve. They fight, they learn, they get stronger. Fane dismissed the assembly, and as the cadets filed out, I noticed them giving Kira plenty of space. Not exactly out of fear, but out of a new caution. Respect earned through action, not words. I approached her as she gathered her belongings. Cadet Bennett, off the record, I said. How many humans are there? About 11 billion at last count, she replied. 11 billion. 11 billion apex predators. Each capable of learning, adapting, and fighting with the accumulated knowledge of millions of years of survival. The galaxy had welcomed humanity as just another species, another voice in the interstellar community. We should have been more cautious. We should have asked more questions. We should have realized that a species that colonizes a death world and thrives is extraordinary, dangerous, without relying on claws, venom, or armor. Humans do not need weapons. They are weapons. Every individual is forged in the harshest conditions, tempered by millions of years of survival, and sharpened by 10,000 years of organized warfare against one another. The instructor said, no weapons in the academy, yet Kira Bennett showed that it made no difference. When an entire species is a weapon, rules about what you can bring into the ring are irrelevant. That was the lesson the Galactic Combat Academy learned that day. Never underestimate a species just because they seem harmless, especially if they come from a death world. Especially if they are humans. Humans do not need weapons. They never did. And that is exactly what makes them so formidable.